When Ruth woke that morning, she was free. When she went to bed that night, a stranger owned all her rights. And the court said it was perfectly legal. Ruth Hendricks woke up on April 3rd, 2023, in her own bed, in her own home in Las Vegas, Nevada. She was 78 years old, a retired school teacher who had lived in the same house for 42 years. She made herself coffee in the kitchen, where she'd raised 3 children. She watered the roses her late husband had planted in 1995. She called her daughter in California to confirm their lunch date for Friday. By 9 p.m. that same day, Ruth Hendricks was no longer a free citizen of the United States. She had become property. And the truly terrifying part? It was completely legal. This is the story of how America's guardianship system, designed to protect the vulnerable, has become a billion-dollar machine that strips elderly people of every constitutional right they possess and does it with a judge's signature. Ruth's nightmare began not with a crime she committed, but with a fall she never had. How does a perfectly healthy, independent woman lose everything she owns and every right she has in less than 12 hours? The answer will shock you. On the morning of April 3rd, a white van pulled up to Ruth's tidy ranch house. 2 men in polo shirts with a company logo, Sapphire Guardian Services, knocked on her door. Ruth answered, confused. "Can I help you?" The taller man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Hendricks, I'm Stephen Crane, and I've been appointed by the Clark County Court as your legal guardian. I need you to come with us." Ruth laughed. It had to be a mistake. "Guardian? I don't need a guardian. I'm fine. Who sent you?" Crane pulled out a folded court document. "Judge Patricia Morrison signed the order this morning at 8 a.m. You're now under emergency guardianship due to reports of self-neglect and diminished capacity." Ruth felt her legs go weak. "Reports? What reports? I was never notified of any court hearing." Crane's smile vanished. "Ma'am, you have 2 options. Come voluntarily or I call the police to escort you. You're legally incapacitated now. You no longer have the right to refuse." Within 30 minutes, Ruth was in the van. Within 2 hours, she was in a locked memory care facility. Within 6 hours, her bank accounts were frozen and transferred to Crane's control. Within 12 hours, her house was listed for sale. She had not been allowed to make a single phone call. You might be thinking, this can't be real. There are laws against this. You're right. There should be. But in 39 U.S. states, guardianship can be granted in emergency hearings where the alleged incapacitated person doesn't even have to be notified or present. The truth is, Ruth had been targeted. 3 weeks earlier, a woman claiming to be from Senior Health Services had knocked on her door, offering a free wellness check. Ruth, always trusting, had let her in. The woman asked questions. Did Ruth live alone? Did she have family nearby? What medications was she taking? She even asked to see Ruth's checkbook to verify insurance. Ruth thought it was strange but harmless. That woman was a professional guardian spotter. Someone paid to identify wealthy, isolated seniors who could be funneled into the guardianship system. Ruth owned her home outright, valued at $485,000. She had $340,000 in savings and a pension. She was a perfect target. Critical warning for viewers. Professional guardians make money by controlling their ward's assets. In many states, they can legally charge $85 to $150 per hour for guardian services, plus fees for housing, medical care, and management. A single guardian can control 50 to 100 wards simultaneously, generating millions in annual revenue. The longer the ward lives, the more money they make. It's a legalized racket, and the victims are our parents, our grandparents, and someday, us. But how did the court decide Ruth needed a guardian without ever speaking to her? The system is designed for speed, not justice. The petition for guardianship had been filed by Stephen Crane himself, claiming he'd received concerned reports from neighbors about Ruth wandering confused, leaving her stove on, and failing to pay bills. None of it was true. Ruth's neighbors later testified they'd never been contacted. Her bills were paid automatically. She'd never left the stove on. But Crane had included a letter from a doctor, Dr. Raymond Weiss, stating that Ruth showed signs of moderate dementia and was a danger to herself. Ruth had never met Dr. Weiss. He was a physician who worked exclusively with Crane's Guardian Company, writing identical diagnoses for dozens of seniors he'd never examined, for a fee of $500 per letter. The emergency hearing lasted 7 minutes. Ruth was not present. She had no attorney. Judge Morrison reviewed the paperwork, the fake medical report, the fabricated neighbor concerns, Crane's polished presentation, and signed the order. Ruth Hendricks was now legally incapacitated. She could no longer vote, drive, sign contracts, marry, or make medical decisions. She could not refuse medication, choose where to live, or control a single dollar of her own money. In the eyes of the law, she had become a child. No, worse than a child. Children have advocates. Ruth had none. Question: how did I get here? The facility, Serenity Springs Memory Care, was a converted motel with barred windows and locked doors. The monthly cost was $8,500, paid directly from Ruth's frozen bank account to a company that Crane partially owned. The rooms were small, 2 beds each with industrial carpeting and fluorescent lights that buzzed constantly. Meals were prepackaged, microwaved. Staff rotated every few hours, barely making eye contact. When Ruth asked to use the phone to call her daughter, a nurse told her, "Your guardian hasn't authorized phone privileges yet." Ruth met Doris, 74, a former accountant who'd been under guardianship for 11 months. "They took my house," Doris whispered in the day room, glancing nervously at the cameras mounted in every corner. "Sold it for $290,000. Crane said it was necessary to fund my care. I haven't seen a penny. My son tried to visit, but they said I was too agitated and turned him away. He tried to hire a lawyer, but Crane got a court order saying my son was emotionally exploiting me and banned all contact." This is the true horror of guardianship abuse. Once you're in the system, escape is nearly impossible. The guardian controls everything, including your ability to hire a lawyer to fight the guardianship. Ruth learned the rules quickly. Wake at 6 a.m., medications at 7 a.m., pills she didn't recognize, hadn't been prescribed by her real doctor. If she refused, they'd mark her as non-compliant, and Crane would petition the court to forcibly medicate her. Breakfast at 8 a.m. Group activities that consisted of sitting in front of a television showing soap operas. Lunch, more sitting, dinner. Lights out at 8:30 p.m. No personal belongings allowed. They'd taken her jewelry, her wedding ring, even her photographs. For safekeeping, they said. Ruth asked every day to speak to Crane. He never came. But Ruth's daughter, Jennifer, was searching. When Ruth didn't show up for their Friday lunch, Jennifer called. No answer. She drove from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, arriving at Ruth's house to find it empty, a lockbox on the door, and a for sale sign in the yard. Panicked, Jennifer called hospitals, police stations, morgues. Nobody had any record of Ruth Hendricks. Finally, a neighbor mentioned seeing Ruth leave with some men in a van. Jennifer called the police. An officer looked up Ruth's name in the system and said, "Oh, she's under guardianship. You need to contact her guardian." Jennifer was about to discover that being Ruth's daughter meant nothing in the eyes of the law. The guardian had more rights to Ruth's life than her own child. Jennifer called Sapphire Guardian Services and demanded to speak to Crane. A receptionist said, "Mr. Crane is aware of your concerns. He's reviewed Mrs. Hendricks' case and determined that contact with family members is not in her best interest at this time. All communication must go through our office." Jennifer exploded. "She's my mother! Where is she? I have a right to see her!" The receptionist's voice turned cold. "Actually, ma'am, you don't. Your mother is incapacitated. Mr. Crane is her legal guardian, which means he has full decision-making authority. If you continue to harass this office, we'll seek a restraining order." Jennifer hired a lawyer, David Rosen, who specialized in elder abuse cases. Rosen knew the game. "This is going to be expensive and difficult," he warned. "Guardians have incredible power. We're essentially trying to prove your mother isn't incapacitated, but Crane will fight back with his doctor, his reports, and the court's previous ruling. Judges hate admitting they made mistakes." Practical advice for viewers. Number 1. If someone you love is placed under guardianship, act immediately. Every day that passes, the guardian gains more control and drains more assets. Document everything. Hire an attorney who specializes in guardianship law. Not all lawyers understand this system. File an emergency motion to terminate or modify the guardianship. Request an independent medical evaluation. And most importantly, request a hearing where your loved one is physically present in court. It took Jennifer 6 weeks to get a court date. 6 weeks during which Ruth sat locked in a facility, her savings bleeding away at a rate of $15,000 per month in care costs and guardian fees. When the hearing finally arrived, Jennifer brought medical records from Ruth's real physician, sworn statements from neighbors, bank records showing Ruth's financial competence, and a psychologist's independent evaluation confirming Ruth had no dementia. Crane arrived with Dr. Weiss and a thick binder of incident reports claiming Ruth was violent, delusional, and refused medication, all fabricated. The hearing lasted 90 minutes. Ruth was finally allowed to speak. She stood before Judge Morrison, her voice shaking but clear. "Your Honor, I am not confused. I am not incapacitated. I am a prisoner. I have been kidnapped, robbed, and held against my will for 6 weeks. I am begging you, please let me go home." Judge Morrison looked uncomfortable. She reviewed the files. She asked Ruth basic questions. "What year is it? Who's the president? What's 100 minus 7? Ruth answered perfectly. The judge turned to Crane. "Mr. Crane, Mrs. Hendricks seems quite competent today." Crane smiled smoothly. "Your Honor, this is common with dementia patients. They have moments of lucidity, but it's not sustainable. The incident reports clearly document episodes of aggression and confusion. Removing the guardianship now would put Mrs. Hendricks at serious risk." And here's where the system fails most profoundly. Judges rely on the guardian's word. Even when the family presents contradictory evidence, the court defaults to the professional who's already been appointed. Judge Morrison ruled that the guardianship would remain in place, but with modified conditions. Ruth could have supervised visits with Jennifer once per week. The house sale would be paused pending further review. It was a partial victory, But Ruth was still trapped. Jennifer left the courtroom in tears. Rosen put a hand on her shoulder. "This is how it works," he said grimly. "We have to fight harder." Over the next 3 months, Jennifer discovered the true scope of the damage. Crane had charged $48,000 in guardian fees, another $25,000 for care management. The facility had billed $76,500. Ruth's savings had been depleted by $149,500 in 12 weeks. But Jennifer also discovered something else. Ruth wasn't Crane's only victim. Through a support group for families fighting guardianship abuse, Jennifer met 7 other families whose loved ones were under Crane's control. All told similar stories: sudden emergency guardianship, isolation, rapid asset depletion. Together, they hired a private investigator. What they found was staggering. Crane controlled 43 wards across Nevada. In 3 years, he'd moved over $18 million through his network of companies. The Guardian Service, the care facility, a medical supply company, even a estate liquidation business. It was a vertically integrated empire built on human beings stripped of their rights. Jennifer and the other families did something that Crane never expected. They went to the media. A local investigative reporter, Maria Sanchez, had been tracking guardianship abuse for years. She jumped on the story. The news segment aired on a Thursday evening. Guardianship for Profit: How One Man Built a $1 million Business by Trapping Seniors. The segment featured Ruth's story, interviews with other families, and secretly recorded footage from inside Serenity Springs showing neglected, over-medicated residents. The video went viral. By Friday morning, the Nevada Attorney General's office announced an investigation. By Monday, the FBI joined, looking into Medicaid fraud and elder abuse charges. By Wednesday, Judge Morrison, facing scrutiny for rubber-stamping guardianship petitions, recused herself from all of Crane's cases. On May 15, 2023, 42 days after being taken from her home, Ruth Hendricks walked out of Serenity Springs a free woman. But she wasn't whole. The emergency motion to terminate the guardianship had been granted by a different judge who actually listened to the evidence. Ruth returned to her house, which now felt foreign and violated. Her bedroom had been emptied, her possessions sold. Her bank account showed $191,000 remaining from the original $340,000. The psychological trauma was deeper. Ruth developed severe anxiety. She jumped every time someone knocked on the door. She couldn't sleep without checking the locks 3 times. She'd lost 20 pounds. Her daughter had to move in because Ruth was terrified of being alone. "They can just take you," she told Jennifer in the middle of the night. "You can be free 1 minute and gone the next, and nobody stops them." Critical lessons for everyone watching: how to protect yourself from guardianship abuse. 1. Create legal protections. Now, establish a durable power of attorney and healthcare proxy with people you trust before any crisis occurs. If these documents exist, courts are far less likely to appoint an outside guardian. 2. Designate emergency contacts. File your POA documents with your bank, your doctor, and local hospitals. Make sure institutions know who to call if something happens. 3. Stay socially connected. Isolated seniors are prime targets. Join community groups. Maintain relationships, stay visible. Guardians look for people who won't be missed. 4. Be wary of unsolicited wellness checks. Legitimate agencies don't cold call or knock on doors offering free services that require detailed financial information. If someone asks invasive questions about your assets, refuse and document the interaction. 5. Know your state laws. Some states, like Nevada, Florida, Texas, have notoriously abusive guardianship systems. Know your rights. Some states require notification and legal representation before guardianship can be imposed. 6. Support reform. Organizations like NASGA, National Association to Stop Guardian Abuse, are fighting for legal reforms. Support legislation that requires due process, independent medical evaluations, and mandatory reviews of guardian finances. Ruth's case helped spark change, but thousands of others remain trapped in the system right now. In September 2023, Stephen Crane was arrested on 47 counts of fraud, theft, and elder abuse. His medical collaborator, Dr. Weiss, lost his license. Judge Morrison resigned, but the system itself remains intact. There are still thousands of professional guardians operating legally, many ethical, but some predatory. And the vulnerable, our parents, grandparents, neighbors, remain at risk every single day. The guardianship system was created with noble intentions, to protect seniors who truly cannot care for themselves due to advanced dementia, severe mental illness, or catastrophic injury. But like many systems, it's been corrupted by profit. When guardianship is used properly, when a loving family member becomes guardian for someone who genuinely needs help, it's a mercy. But when weaponized by professionals who see incapacitated seniors as revenue streams, it becomes legalized kidnapping and theft. The safeguards that should exist, mandatory hearings with the alleged incapacitated person present, independent medical evaluations, regular financial audits, easy pathways for termination, are often weak or non-existent. Ruth eventually recovered emotionally, though she'll never fully trust the system again. She became an advocate, testifying before the Nevada State Legislature for guardianship reform. In 2024, Nevada passed Ruth's Law, requiring that all emergency guardianships be reviewed within 30 days, that alleged incapacitated persons have the right to legal representation at state expense, and that all guardian financial dealings be audited annually by an independent agency. It's a start, but it's only one state. 38 others still have systems ripe for abuse. The question isn't whether guardianship abuse will touch your family. The question is, are you prepared to fight it when it does? Ruth sits now in her living room, the same room she was taken from over a year ago. Her daughter visits weekly. Her grandchildren call more often. She's replanted the roses. She's learned to sleep through the night again, though she still checks the locks. She keeps copies of her power of attorney in 3 locations, and she's made sure every one of her friends knows. If something happens to me, call Jennifer immediately. Don't trust anyone who shows up with papers and a van. The real horror of Ruth's story isn't just what happened to her. It's how easily it could happen to anyone. There's no profile, no specific vulnerability required. You don't have to be demented or incompetent. You just have to be old, have assets, and cross paths with someone who sees opportunity in your existence. The system that's supposed to protect you can be turned into a weapon against you. And the most terrifying part? It's all perfectly legal. Ruth closes her eyes and remembers the moment the van pulled up. The polite man with the court papers. The feeling of the world tilting, reality breaking. She remembers thinking, this can't be happening. Not in America, not to me. But it did happen. It's happening right now to someone else. Maybe someone you know. Maybe someday to you. The guardianship system is a necessary tool that's become a potential trap. And the only defense is knowledge, preparation, and the courage to fight back when they come for your freedom. Because in America, you can lose everything you are with a single signature. And the person holding the pen might be a judge you've never met, believing the words of a guardian you've never seen, in a hearing you were never told about. That's the guardianship trap. And Ruth Hendricks survived it. Barely.